All right, folks, welcome to Are You Sharing Data Like It's 2025? My name is Fisher, and today we'll be presenting with Jen and Scott, who are also part of the Clinical Data Exchange team at PCC. This talk is going to go over a lot of the features in PCC, some you are probably familiar with, and others you may not be, as well as features you may not be fully aware of as well. It's going to be a pretty exciting talk. There will be time for questions. We are going to use Slido for questions. This is the QR code for the Slido Q&A, if you wouldn't mind going on there. And make sure you have the talk selected for Are You Sharing Data Like It's 2025? There's another talk going on at the same time that has a similar title. The three going on with a similar title, I'm being told. We probably will not do a hand-around microphone question, so it'll all be through the Slido. I believe the QR code will show up again at the end if you don't get it now, and that's okay. For our friends streaming, this is so that you can also send us questions as well, and we'll do our best to answer. At the end, I'll cover questions from both online and in the room. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jen.
Okay, thanks, Fisher. Thanks, everybody, for coming. We've got a lot of great content for you. So first we'll talk about the course objectives. We hope by the end of the session that you'll be able to identify the various options for data sharing that we're going to cover in the course. And by sharing, that could mean sending data, it could mean receiving it, or it could mean retrieving it. And depending on the offering, it might be some combination of those. We hope that you'll be able to understand the use cases for each offering. So the why and when you would use one offering over another. And then finally, we want you to leave knowing how to get your practices started with each of the offerings so that you could begin to take advantage of them if you're not already. All right, so I'm going to be starting off talking about the EHR-based features that allow data sharing for a single patient. And those are direct secure messaging, clinical document exchange, the chart export, and bidirectional immunizations. And then Scott Kirby will jump in to cover back-end offerings. These are the kinds of offerings that you can't see working in PCC EHR. They're behind the scenes, and they allow data sharing at the population level. So he'll be talking about offerings related to public health and ones that allow you to share population level data with HIEs, CINs, and the like. So we're going to jump right in and start talking about direct secure messaging. Direct secure They're entities that issue direct addresses. They encrypt messages. To just the referral encounter. You'd select the direct secure messaging option and you'd click the send to button. And that brings you to a place where you could enter the recipient's direct address. Now, you can't put a regular email address in that field. It won't work. You have to enter a direct address, one that's been issued by a HISP. If you don't know your recipient's direct address, you can perform a search for it. Sometimes searching for direct addresses can be tricky because some HISPs don't allow searching of their directories. But once you get an address in there, you add a subject line, a message, just like a regular email. The summary of care that you generated for that patient is already attached, and you have the option of attaching an additional file from your workstation or a document from the patient chart. And then you click send, and off it goes. Now, if someone at another organization or the local hospital sends you a direct secure message, it lands in the messaging queue. And you're able to use the task filter to easily find direct secure messages that have come in. And from this queue, you can open up the message. The first thing I'll point out about this message is that there's two attachments. One is a CCD, a structured CCDA that's been attached, and the other is a PDF. Because there's a structured document attached, PCC EHR has some insight into who the patient is. You can see at the top of the screen, it says patient information from the continuity of care document. So the EHR has a little insight into who the patient is, and also therefore can provide some suggestions on the right-hand side for who you might want to attach this message to. In the middle, you've got some basic information about the message, who it's from, the subject, the message that was sent. And then there's two ways to view any attachments. You can use the buttons provided or the tabs at the top. So once you find the patient that you want to attach the message to, and the message is attached to the patient's chart, you'll see that there's a protocol, a DSM protocol. In this example, there's just the message and tasks, but you can configure it to include other components. And you'll also notice that there's a reconcile button. Because there's a structured document, a CCDA, attached to this message, you're able to reconcile certain sections of it, specifically problems, medication allergies, and medications. So you can compare what's in the structured document to what's in the patient's chart for those three sections and choose, if anything, what you might want to import into the patient's chart. And that in a nutshell is direct secure messaging. As far as getting started, you'd want to reach out to your exchange partners and see if they're using direct. And if they are, you would want to jot down their direct address so that you have it. The next step would be contacting your CA and expressing your interest, and then shortly thereafter, a member of the CDX implementation team, likely Fisher, but maybe Jake, would reach out and provide training and onboarding for the solution. All right, moving right along, clinical document exchange. So clinical document exchange is a framework that provides a way for an organization ultimately to retrieve documents from another organization. But there's three steps. The first is querying the organization for a particular patient to see if there's a match, and then learning what documents are available for that patient, and then actually fetching them from that other organization. You can think of the CDE solution kind of like a conversation between two organizations. There's the organization that's seeking the documents, that's the initiator, and then there's the organization that has the documents, that's the responder. If your practice onboards with the CDE solution, you're playing both roles, but on the initiator side, you're taking an active role. And we'll go through those slides in the EHR. You're taking an active role. You're pushing buttons in the EHR. For the responder side, That happens behind the scenes without your intervention. Okay, so Care Equality is the name of an organization that's associated with CDE. Care Equality is a nonprofit, and they kind of have established rules of the road for all the organizations that have implemented this framework that I've been talking about. So the important things to know here are that PCC is a Care Equality implementer. We implement the framework. If your practice participates with the CDE solution, it becomes a Care Equality connection. And then lastly, documents that are exchanged between organizations, it happens directly from one organization to the other. There isn't a middleman or a third party in between. No data passes through Care Equality or any other entity. Why would you use this solution? So CDE creates a connection between your practice and other organizations, often much larger health systems. So you could, for example, if you know a patient has been to the hospital, the local hospital, you could use the CDE solution to see if there's a discharge summary available and pull that into the EHR. On the flip side, the CDE solution allows you to make an up-to-date summary of care available for patients who have consented, available to other organizations out there, other Care Equality connections who might be querying your practice. Okay, so we'll talk about the initiator role first. This slide is just showing you that there is a way to set up default organizations to query in PCC EHR. So this might be your local hospital. And when you want to actually initiate a query, you would go into the patient's chart, you'd navigate to history, and then the Find Clinical Documents component. And at this point, any default organizations you've set up would automatically get queried, but you also have the option to search for and query organizations on the fly. In which case, you would click Find Patient, and this is the first step in the process. You're trying to find a match. Hopefully that organization will return back a match. You'll have to confirm that the demographics that they've sent are what you're expecting. Once you confirm the match, you can proceed to the next step, which is finding documents. And so now the responding organization is sending a list of what's available for that patient. PCC EHR will display some information that the organization provides about the documents that are available. For example, the document name and the file type. You can then select what documents you want to retrieve with the retrieve buttons. And PCC EHR will pull those in, and you're able to view them. And if a CCDA, a structured document, has been retrieved, you have the option to reconcile those three sections that I talked about in the DSM slides, same workflow. If you're wondering what kind of documents are available at organizations, it really depends on the implementer and what the implementer has made available. There's variation. The majority of documents that are being retrieved with the solution are CCDAs, structured documents, but there's other kinds as well. There's PDFs and image files. Okay, so on the responder side of things, as I mentioned, for this side of things, this happens behind the scenes without your intervention. PCC EHR automatically makes available a most updated summary of care document for each patient that has consented, available for retrieval by other Care Equality connections that might be querying your practice. As far as getting started, the first step is to go to carequality.org and perform a search to see if any of your exchange partners use the solution. Because this is only going to be as useful to you if your exchange partners are also using it, right? If your practice decides to use the solution and you become a Carequality connection, you also become searchable on this site. You'll be a Carequality connection, and you'll be discoverable here. All right, so after you confirm what entities around you are using the solution, you'll contact your client advocate, let them know that you want to get set up, and then, again, shortly thereafter, CDX implementation will reach out to get you trained and onboarded. Okay, so next is the chart export. The chart export is a tool in PCC EHR that allows you to export a single patient's chart into an encrypted file. Why would you use this solution? So if a patient or a patient's family requests a patient's data full record, transition of care, legal reasons like a subpoena, and insurance chart audits. So these are all examples of situations where you might be asked for the totality of a patient's record. And the chart export tool provides a pretty easy way for you to do that, to provide all that. Okay, as far as how it works, again, you go into the patient's chart, and from the reports menu, there's an option rather for chart export. Now, in order to use the chart export, you need permission for it first. And with a lot of things that we build and release to you, we usually ship it out on so that everyone can take advantage of it. But that's not the case with what we've done with the chart export tool, because there's so much PHI that's getting exported at once. We really encourage everyone to carefully consider who at your practice has permission to use the chart export tool. And so it might be that it's only most appropriate for those responsible for patient records, and that might only be one or two people at your practice. So if you do have access, you'll be able to click the chart export, and that'll pull up a dialog. You'll see toward the top there's an encryption password, and that's unique to this particular export that you're doing right at this time. There's a copy button that you could use to copy that encryption password to your workstation clipboard, and then you can paste it somewhere safe and secure on your workstation, because you will have to share it with the recipient of the export file. So once you've done that, you'll see there's options below. All of those options for confidential content, sexual orientation and gender identity, portal messages, and phone notes, those are all excluded by default, and then you can choose, depending on the situation, whether you want to include any of those. Once you make your selections, you click Export, and you'll be prompted to save the export to your workstation. If you are using Secure Connect, the file would get saved to your server, which could cause some complications in finding it and sharing it. So you might want to use the FAT client for this particular solution. So you save the export to your workstation. You're able to change the file name if you want to. And then you can take that export file and you could email it to the recipient, or you could put it on a flash drive. If you decided to email it, for example, you wouldn't also want to email the encryption password to the recipient. You'd want to provide it in some separate communication, maybe over the phone, for example, just to keep things safe and secure. So once the recipient enters the encryption password, They have access to all of the files in the export. There's a lot of different files and different file formats, from CSV to HTML to PDF. What might be of most interest to most folks is the visit summaries, which are nestled in the encounters folder, which there's an arrow to that if you can't see it on the screen. There is some really awesome documentation on Learn about the chart export tool and about all of the data points that are in all of these files. So strongly encourage everyone to check that out if you're interested in learning more. So as far as getting started, like I said, visit Learn to learn more. Second, carefully consider who should have access to the tool at your practice. And then third, you can use user administration to grant access to the tool. All right, bidirectional immunizations. So what is bidirectional? So it's the ability to submit your immunization data to your registry and also retrieve it. Retrieve immunization data and import it into the EHR for your patient. This is the map that I showed this morning. So, you know, with only a few exceptions, in most jurisdictions, bidirectional is available. Why would you use bidirectional? Well, I think in most cases, you're required to submit your immunization data to the registry, and electronically submitting it saves you the time and effort of logging into your registry's portal. And as far as retrieving, it's great for new patients because you can query the registry and pull in their history, import it. You don't have to type it manually. And it's also great for existing patients as well because you can see if, right within the EHR workflow, have they gotten any immunizations in between, me seeing them. Okay, so as far as submissions, this is not something that I can show you because it kind of happens behind the scenes. So I'm going to have Scott Kirby jump in and speak to how submissions work.
Thanks. Let's see. Hello? Okay, cool. Yeah. Hey, guys. Yeah, so this is a sort of background process. As you guys go about charting and marking your immunizations administered in the chart, there's a series of automated triggers that PCC EHR keeps behind the scenes that add to a little message queue, right? And then based on the submission model of a given immunization registry jurisdiction that sort of dictates the timing and what interactions they support, that message queue gets picked up and sent off in the little HL7 standard format to your immunization registry. Different immunization registry jurisdictions support different trigger interactions, so some of them only allow you to first submit the addition of a new immunization administration. Some of them then allow you to update that if information has changed. So if you go back into the chart and you've changed something about the order or marked something different, when you save it, we'll send an update to your registry if they allow that. Likewise, if you find out that something was entered in error, etc., and you mark it canceled or something along those lines, if the registry supports it, we will send a deletion message to them and they'll erase that on that side. We support whatever trigger interactions the registry supports because we like to help you guys keep your inventory balanced on both sides. We know it can be tricky if you've got one decremented there, but then it turns out that isn't really what happened, then you got to go log in manually, etc., etc. To making sure that the immunization submissions flow nicely and that inventory decrementation logic works the way you want it to, it is critical to do proper immunization configuration in PCEHR. Make sure you've got your CVX codes mapped correctly, your VFC statuses, the various NDC codes, you're using the lot manager appropriately, and I think I'm probably supposed to plug another talk, but I don't see it here. Do you guys know when the the immunization. What's that? Yeah. Complete guide to vaccine administration. Tomorrow morning, 10:30. Complete guide to vaccine administration. I assume Romney Palmer's on that one. She'll walk you through everything you need to know about making sure all your IMs are configured correctly in PCEHR so that you can make sure you got optimal submission to your immunization registry. And I think that's about it for this one, yeah? All right, back to Jen.
Okay, hopefully you can still hear me. Okay, all right, cool. Thanks, Scott. So once you're submitting, depending on your registry, some registries return responses to your submissions, and there is a way in PCC-EHR to view those responses. And you can do that through the Immunization Registry Response Viewer. It allows you to, like I said, view the messages that come back, and you can use the filters at the bottom to filter by severity. For the most part, you'd probably be interested in the errors and the warnings, not the successful responses that come back. From here, you can dig into specific responses that come back for a certain submission. There is the ability for you to jump right into the patient's chart in the event that you need to correct some data in the patient's chart. There's also a way for you to mark a certain response as reviewed so that you can keep track of which ones you've reviewed and which ones you still need to review. And like Scott said, if you want to learn more about using this tool, the class that Romney will be presenting tomorrow morning, the Complete Guide to Vaccine Administration, would be a great course for you to attend. Okay, so that was submission. Now we're going to talk about retrieval. So once your practice is set up with bidirectional, you'll find that there's a Retrieve IMS button at the top of the immunization history in the patient's chart. It would also be present in the protocol. And when you click that Retrieve IMS button, it sends a query out to the registry, and they'll send back some patient demographics so that you can confirm that this is indeed your patient. You can compare the demographics that are in the EHR on the left with the demographics that the registry has returned on the right. If it looks good, you would click the next button. And now you would be presented with the vaccine history that the immunization registry has on file for that patient. On the top half there, any dates that are in black are already in that patient's immunization history in the EHR. Any dates that are in orange are not yet in that patient's immunization history. Below that, there's a section for diseases and forecasting results. Not all registries provide that, but if they do, PCC-EHR displays it. And so you'd click the next button after reviewing that information. And this is the screen where you would get to select the immunizations and dates that you want to import into PCC-EHR for this patient. And so you'd click import, and then you'd want to double check the patient's chart just to make sure that everything went in all right. As far as getting started, just double check that connections map to make sure what connections are available in your state. And then you'll contact your client advocate and express your interest. And you guessed it, a CDX implementation specialist will be in touch with you shortly after to talk about next steps. And those next steps can vary depending on what registry you want to connect to. Okay, and that does it for me. I'm going to turn it over to Scott.
Thank you. And thank you. Excuse me for a moment if I'm out of breath. I just jogged to the restroom between that one immunization slide and coming back. So, all right, here we go. Yeah, so besides the interactive features that Jen just showed you, there's a lot of background processes with data integration that we should talk about here. PCC supports the automated integration of your data with a variety of care delivery partners, depending on the needs of the practice, the sort of jurisdiction you're working in, what your state is like, et cetera, et cetera. These are typically handled as individual projects, so they're not just sort of, a broad product feature, but they generally involve PCC working directly with folks from whatever the external organization is that you need to connect to in order to establish connectivity and data exchange using methods that meet whatever the specific use case needs are. So these are things where we have to spin up projects, talk to your HIE, your state DOH, whoever it is that we're integrating with, making sure we're all on the same page and get things up and running. There we go. So we're just going to look at a couple kind of common use cases of these today. We're going to look at public health reporting, health information exchange, both the noun and the verb, whatever you like, and different kinds of provider networks that we're integrating with more and more frequently now. For public health reporting, a bunch of departments of health in various states support automated reporting of specific result types, most commonly led in COVID, right? These integrations are pretty non-standard. Sometimes they'll use an international standard, an HL7 ORU message or something, but sometimes they're a random CSV some guy in a state office cooked up. They could be virtually anything. And so it really depends on your state capacities and how they handle this. Obviously, some states don't even support automated reporting. I'm sure some of you guys have to key in your lead results or so on and so forth. And if we can help you get around that, we'd love to, but the state has to help us help you. Yeah. So if your state does support an automated or integrated reporting option like this, you can request that we work with them to get it set up. We'll address those requests based on the compatibility and engagement level of your state Department of Health. If they've got simple specs and they're quick to turn on an endpoint for us, we'd love to work through practice and get you set up submitting automatically. Got a handful of these in production right now. We've got lead reporting in the states you see up there, as well as COVID reporting here. It's obviously not as extensive a list as the immunization registry stuff because that's more mandated and standardized across various states. These ones, each state kind of gets to have their pick. So we're just onboarding them as we find states that have specs we can support and clients who want us to connect to them. So if you're on here and you didn't know that you could do these things automatically, let us know and we'll sort of get you on the train. If you think your state supports automatic lead reporting, COVID reporting, etc., and are interested in us trying to talk to them about it, let us know, send us the documentation, and we'll check it out. Moving on to health information exchange, right? So we assist in integrating PCC customer data with tons of HIEs around the country at this point. These are typically in the form of outbound demographic and clinical document feeds. So demographic, think of, name, age, date of birth, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, address stuff, sometimes insurance info, but just sort of populating the patient roster at your HIE or doing sort of deduplication if they get that patient roster elsewheres. And then a clinical document feed to them, right? The clinical document feeds are typically encounter-based, right? So they've got triggers behind the scenes such that as you finish up your encounters for the day, a nightly process runs, checks all the finished encounters, bundles up a clinical document containing the information for it, and ships it off to your HIE for ingestion into their sort of aggregate data reporting framework. Excuse me. Many HIEs are also carry quality connections, like what Jen was talking about previously, either directly as carry quality connections or as e-health exchange connections, which is sort of the state and HIE-based document exchange framework. But those are connected now, so a lot of the HIEs you can get to through carry quality. So if you're wondering if yours is on it, you can either check that big map that Jen showed or ask us, and we can look it up for you in their directory. Provider networks, yeah. So in addition to these various sort of government-y ones, PCC works with provider networks of the various alphabet soups you might like up there. to help you guys share data for stuff like care coordination, clinical quality measures, sort of payer contract negotiation incentives, all these kinds of things you might need. And depending on the need of a network and its practices, the specifics here can really vary. Sometimes they are standardized in the way that an HIE might want them, where it's demographics and clinical documents and stuff that we can more or less just flip the switch and turn on. We love it when that's the case, because it makes it very easy for us to get you connected to them. However, I don't blame the CINs and ACOs and so on for this. I blame the payers ultimately. There are many cases in which they want stuff that you don't get in those standard feeds, and therefore you end up having to put together a broad set of CSVs or some other sort of weird non-standard data exchange method with them. Sometimes the only way we can support the full breadth of data that they want is to arrange to get them remote database access that the practice can sort of authorize and grant to them. So that's sort of a chainsaw for cutting paper, in my opinion. But nonetheless, if we have to do it, we can work with you to do it. We care about getting you guys connected with these because we know it's important to your independence. So that's this one as well. So how do you get started on any of these? Whether you need to get set up with your DOH, your state HIE, or a local CIN, ACO, etc. We've got this interoperability request form that you can see at the URL there. It's also linked on our website. It's just pcc.com/interoperability/request. We currently have it behind this password. That's not top secret, as you can probably tell because I put it in this slideshow. But it's just there to stop bot traffic. It's sort of like a CAPTCHA. So there you are. You have it. And if you gather the required information from whoever the third party is, it's going to ask you questions like, what kind of data are you trying to exchange? You can tell us in a broad sense. This is a lab request. This is a HIE request. This is something like that. And who on the other side is going to work with us? Who should we reach out to at your CIN, whatever it is? And who at your office we should correspond with about it to work through the request. You click submit on that guy, pops into my email box. I create a project for it, and we reach out and are off to the races. Some of you guys have maybe used this before, I would assume? Yeah, okay. I see Dr. Willie, yeah, for sure. We talked about this one, yeah. All right. And yeah, I think that's the spiel for me. There's another course I'm supposed to plug on providers talking about their various, a panel, yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Tomorrow afternoon, 1:15, you'll hear from various providers and their different integration use cases and which of these services and features and so on they've used to help their practice out. And that's all I've got for you guys today. Please fill out the course survey in the app. And I think we should have plenty of time for questions on the think tank.
All right, folks, we definitely have some questions in the Slido app, and I believe if we go to the next slide here, we are at the Q&A. I thought we put the QR code in here, but I guess we didn't. So I'll just quickly scroll right back to the top of the presentation. There it is. All right, folks. So if you wouldn't mind going to the Slido and doing some Q&A here, I'm just going to walk around with the microphone and hand them off to our parties here. But I've already got some questions here that I already have answers to, so I might as well come and stand up at the podium very briefly. All right. Is there a cost involved in establishing care connections between organizations? I interpreted that as care quality connections between organizations, and the answer is no. It is free. There is no cost from PCC or from care quality to get involved with that. However, there is a cost, quote unquote, theoretically, that it is a bidirectional connection and that's required. So you must share your data in order to query for data. It's not really a cost, so to speak, monetarily, but for some people that might be problematic. And that does require you to have a policy internally as well of how you handle data and how you inform patients and patient families of how they can consent. You would have to choose either an opt-out or opt-in policy as well. If you want to hear the nitty-gritty details of that, you can get in touch with us and we will be happy to give them to you, or you can find them on learn.pcc.com. Another question was, can you use the chart export to obtain medical records from other offices? The chart export feature is mainly for raw data coming out of the PCC EHR to send to other places. There is not really a good way currently to bring an entire chart export from another PCC office into your PCC office. The data that comes out is basically a bunch of PDFs, some CSVs, some other random data. It's not really one contiguous thing, but that is something we hear about frequently. So, if that is something you really, really want, by all means, let us know. We definitely have some user stories for something like that out there. And then we have some other questions that I don't immediately have answers for. The DSMs that we receive sometimes contain a .xml file. Is there any easy way to see the contents of this?
Maybe. I probably need to know a little bit more. Is the question asker in the room on that one?
It's an anonymous question, so I don't
Hey, no, we've got him. Hey, tell me more if you would.
So you get the continuity of care document, but then there's also sometimes just an XML document that you can try to open and it doesn't open.
If you would mind repeating that to me.
I can probably try to find one.
Yeah, let's look at it together. He said sometimes you'll get probably sort of a bundle of attachments from a DSM, one of which you've got the CCDA, which you can pull up and view as the transformed HTML and import and so on, but might have an additional XML document in the bundle that you can't easily see the contents of, and what's the best way to handle those. Yeah, let's at some point offline look at those and see what they are. Sometimes they can be almost like manifests for just giving you metadata about, hey, I've just sent you a CCDA, and you don't actually need to know what's in them at all. But let's make sure of that for sure. Thanks. That's a good question.
Awesome. Okay, we do have some more questions. I'll just keep going down the line. Can you do bidirectional immunizations with a boarding state? I don't know what a boarding state is.
Border, maybe?
Border, maybe? Border state? Bordering? Oh, I see. I understand. I believe currently the answer is no. That is something that's frequently asked for, but that is there is no functionality for that at this time.
Yeah. I'll add to that if I may.
Please. It's
Yeah, thank you. That one's complex. We don't have the user-facing workflows for it, but also that would require provision of authorization and credentials to the practice from both states, and figuring out sort of what the status of the practice with both immunization registries are. So it's something that we come back to talking about every so often, and we're interested in looking at how to do it in the long term. But as Fisher said, we don't have support for that currently.
All right. Do you know if South Carolina accepts integrated reporting for lead and other lab reporting? Or to broaden the question, how can you find out if your state accepts those things? Do we have a good answer for that?
I don't know if it's a good answer, but I'd say reach out directly to your state Department of Health and ask them. Now, I know someone just heard that answer and was like, do you think they respond to those emails? I know some are better than others, but certainly they don't respond to it from us any better than from you, and probably the opposite. So I would say reach out to them directly. Oftentimes, some states actually have pretty decent information on their automated lead reporting stuff or COVID reporting stuff online, and even have their specifications and everything available. I don't know offhand about South Carolina, but if you don't see the information online, I'd say just shoot an email, either if you have contacts there or just to whatever that basic sort of info at, SCDOH, whatever it is, and see what they say to you, and then pass it along to us, and we'll help pick up the ball.
Okay, here's another one that I think I know the answer at least partially to. When exporting a chart, can we manage what records are going out by date? Like send from January 1st, 2024 to January 1st, 2025. Also, once records are sent, is it noted in the patient's chart that they were sent? Now, I think as regards to how it is sent, export chart doesn't necessarily send it automatically. It just gives you the data. How that gets sent is then up to how you handle it in the office. It could be via USB drive. It could be, I don't think we have the capability to send an entire chart export through DSM, but or actually any part of it, I think, from my immediate understanding. As far as record of sent, there is no record of how it is sent. I don't know if there's a record, though, that an entire export was made. Do you know off the top of your head?
In the audit, probably in the audit log, there should be something, but no, not otherwise. I think Romney had a comment.
Gotcha. Romney, who is another member of the clinical data exchange team, brought up that we have successfully sent whole chart exports through DSM in the past. However, it is size limited. So for some patients, it might be so big that it can't be sent. And I would actually expect that's very common, since there's a lot of data in a patient's chart, including PDFs, including images, and those things add up really quickly. Yes, and as for the dates, I am actually not certain on that. I don't think so currently, but yeah, go for it.
Not currently, but that is a request that we have noted. So we have that enhancement request captured in our system. Go to the wishing well with that request if that's very important to you, and we'll add you to that artifact that we have.
All right. How do I tell which version of an immunization a patient got in bidirectional immunizations? HX. I don't know. Seems to be alphabetical, but I don't want to use the wrong one, is the question.
Are they referred to the drop-down if you have multiple options? Yeah, so that's because we have multiple entries that have the same CVS code. So it's really up to you which one you prefer.
There's no generic one. It's like usually for a hand cannon, we just have something that says, I don't know, I'm a nurse, hepatitis B, I don't know. But when it comes from the state, there's a whole alphabetical list. I thought it was all of them. I think it's the only ones that they have. I thought it was any option.
If it's like it was a particular immunization from your query,
Yes.
and you have a drop-down to select, that drop-down is from your system.
Okay, so it's not coming from
No, let's
their
say,
dad.
yeah, so if you
But I can't, I have to pick something specific, which is not really true.
you can pick any of those specifically.
That doesn't tell you the correct manufacturer.
Oh,
So like FDA will say Angers, and ours it says Angers, or it says we're
I
not.
see, but if they share the same CPX code, essentially,
People want to know the specific.
right,
Yeah, I think it's.
Okay, but the CVX code will always be correct, so I don't have to really panic if I get it wrong.
Right, just use the most common, like, one that you're familiar with, so that you.
Romney, you can come up if you want.
I was gonna say, if you want to speak for us,
We're all friends.
you want to just give him an answer.
Well, yeah, so if you have a drop-down, when you're importing an immunization and suddenly you have all these options, you really should just select the one that you're most familiar with. I know that a lot of the older clients that were distinguishing between VFC and non-VFC would have two entries, let's say, for varicella, and so they'd have two entries. This is all CVX21. It doesn't matter if it's state supplied or private, but they'd have two entries because that's back in the day kind of easier to manage. So now you have the funding source and stuff like that, so you can select a lot that's associated with a VFC funding source, state supplied or whatever. You don't have to be that specific. So some practices, like I said, have multiple selection options and some don't. Really select the one that's most meaningful for the history, because if you're importing it, it's something that you didn't administer. So just something that's meaningful to you. Yeah.
But there's some complexity with that, right? Too, because like the Hefe, you really should give the same brand if you can. And so if you import Habrix and Vacta that have the same CVX, you're now putting something in your record that is not 100% accurate, right?
But you don't know, the state's not giving you enough information to let you know the specific brand. They're just sending you the CVX code. If they share the same CVX code, that you wouldn't have any more information.
Maybe it's a North Carolina thing, but in North Carolina, I can look in the registry and it'll have a brand name, and then it'll send me, then I get a CVX that doesn't let me just in the message tell what brand it was. See what I mean?
Oh, it's probably because because North Carolina pulls in the NDC codes that do have the brand-specific names, and they have the names in there. But when they are transmitting the history, they are transmitting the CVX codes, which for forecasting and such is not distinguishable. The forecasting is using the CVX codes. So
is it in the options set to see if they could, can we ask for the NDC? Because there's a new registry coming in North Carolina, is what I'm asking.
Is there?
Scaring me.
The joke is this was all funded by COVID pandemic money that the Fed just clawed back, so we don't actually know.
But you remember when there was a COVID-specific registry before the actual registry was on?
Oh, yeah.
Those were fun times. Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely check.
Salesforce, by the way.
Nice. Yeah, it was gross. We can definitely check. I don't know offhand if they send even like an MVX code in the RSP you get when we query them.
sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do, right? I've seen some registries do it, but I don't think it's required necessarily, because if you do the historical, you can kind of whitewash it. So it's worth checking. We'll look into it.
The other thing that's sort of a frustration is because we have a lot of TRICARE, we have to have our vaccine named by like a single dose vial, so we can get down to the exact NDC. It can't be just blue zone.
Yeah.
Because who cares if it's single dose vial, multi dose vial?
Yep.
I mean, our opinion is correct. So, if there's some way to roll that up, that's a longer conversation.
Yeah, but that's useful input. I mean, we will eventually take a second pass at what we display when we do the import. So if we can, especially if we can find any of these data points that are consistent across a number of registries, that'd be great. And while you can hear a lot of us complain about registry jurisdiction inconsistencies for any amount of time, we have been working pretty closely with them over the last few years with ARA and the HIMSS Immunization Integration Project to try and help advance that standardization. I'd say they're making some steps. Yeah, it's getting better. So, yeah, definitely worth looking into. Thanks, both of you guys.
For those online, I understand you couldn't hear a lot of that conversation. There was a lot of questions regarding CVX codes and NDC and what different states have for IIS requirements. And in this case, it is kind of a different answer per state, unfortunately. Yeah, if you have questions about that, be sure to reach out to us at support@pcc.com. All right, let's see, which one of these should I go for next? Is it possible to receive incoming charts as a DSM? Would that allow us to reconcile vaccines rather than enter them individually? This is kind of two questions. The first being, are you able to receive incoming charts as a DSM? The answer is kind of yes. You're able to receive a CCDA, but it's not necessarily an entire patient chart like you would see inside the EHR, but it is the patient's information, and it is their chart. As for the question of reconciling vaccines, I'm actually not certain on that.
At the moment, we only support reconciliation of the meaningful use phase 2 reconciliation items, which I think are problems, allergies, medicines.
3 sections: medication allergies and medications and problems.
Thank you. Yes, what she just said. Pardon me. So we don't have IMS reconciliation from inbound DSM yet. It's something we've talked about on and off, and probably one of the more likely ones to eventually hit. That and vitals, the sort of discrete elements that we could potentially extract more easily there. But to answer the question, as of right now, no, we can't do IMS reconciliation from an inbound CCDA. I see Dr. Branco.
Dr. Branco has a question. I'll bring it right to him.
When you say vitals, are you talking about height and weight measurements?
I'm talking purely speculatively, but yeah, I'd like those for sure.
Yeah. Can we make that an enhancement request?
Yeah, we can.
Thank you. Let me just hustle back here. We only have 2 microphones to work with. All right, this is kind of an open question, more for the audience it seems. Does anybody in the room have luck with chart export? The data was so messy when I tried it in the beginning, no other groups could use it. This is something we have heard a lot on the support side. There is definitely an active interest to fix it in a variety of user stories, I believe. It's not just one. But the question of how do we make chart export more useful for folks comes up frequently. As we mentioned earlier, the data export also being user story as well. I was curious if either of you had anything to add on that.
I can share my opinions.
That works.
So yeah, I mean the sort of Frankenstein nature of the chart export is sort of a direct reflection of the pretty vague requirements from the ONC on that front, which more or less just say we want you to have some capacity to pull every bit of digital information from your application on a patient, and we're not going to tell you what format to put it in. It doesn't even have to be something that has a specific standardized reconcilable method to it. It's just got to be every bit of digital information you have in a way that could theoretically be added to another computer system. And in doing that, in a first pass, we more or less used the same kinds of technology we use for an outbound full data conversion, and just said we're going to yank everything out of the different database tables as these CSVs. Oh, but we've got all these images, and yank all these stuff because we're supposed to sort of leave no stone unturned. I suspect there's probably a lot of configurability and different things you could do for different use cases. We've heard some folks say that they would like just the sort of PDFs, just all the documents, or sort of the visit summary PDFs, and toss the CSVs, in the trash or whatever. That's one way to do it, and maybe allowing for you to select that or something like that might be useful, right? Because if the problem is the other system doesn't know what to do with the CSVs, but really it's going to be reviewed by a real human being who's going to look at them, that could be one way to go with it. So I guess from our perspective, we'd be most interested in hearing what the actual data content that would be most useful if you could reduce it to a more manageable quantity would be, because the expansive and kind of chimeric nature of it right now is because of the underlying requirements. But since those are satisfied, and since you can produce this huge bulk of information now, we're allowed to also support smaller bits. So if you tell us what the right sort of slices of chart export are, we can use those for our user stories and think about how better to pop something out for you.
All right, that is the end of my Slido questions. Are there any other questions in the room? Going once, going twice. We're at time. Great job. Thank you so much for coming out, everybody. Please remember to fill out your course survey. I know we didn't, I'm not sure if we're scanning QR codes. I heard there was a bit of an issue with that earlier, but you should still receive a course survey eventually. It just might not be immediately. But thank you very much, and I hope you all have a great day.